you guys remember that Elon Musk, the billionaire, he went and bought Twitter, right? And he said that he wants to make Twitter more oriented towards free speech. He wants to unlock its potential. And of course, that sent a lot of neoliberals into a frenzy because they derive a lot of their power from censoring people. Now, one of the questions that people have been asking is, what about Donald Trump? Because he was banned in the final days of his presidency on Twitter and Facebook and a bunch of other sites, YouTube and so on. And people are asking, well, does that mean you're going to restore Trump's account? Now, the day that Elon Musk bought Twitter, which was for about $44 billion just 2 weeks ago, Trump was asked this question on Fox, and he said, no, even if they give him back his account, he will not return because he wants to promote his own social media platform, which is called Truth Social. And so now you actually have input from Musk himself, and he has said that he will reverse Trump's Twitter ban. Let's take a look.
Are you planning to let Donald Trump back on?
Well, I think there's a general question of should Twitter have permanent bans? And you know, I've talked with Jack Dorsey about this, and he and I are of the same mind, which is that permanent bans should be extremely rare and really reserved for people where they're trying to for accounts that are bots or spam scam accounts, where there's just no legitimacy to the account at all. I do think that it was not correct to ban Donald Trump. I think that was a mistake because it alienated a large part of the country and did not ultimately result in Donald Trump not having a voice. He is now going to be on Truth Social, as will a large part of the sort of the right in the United States, and so I think this could end up being, frankly, worse than having a single forum where everyone can debate. I guess the answer is that I would reverse the perma ban. Obviously, I don't own Twitter yet, so this is not like a thing that will definitely happen, because what if I don't own Twitter? But my opinion, and Jack Dorsey, I want to be clear, shares this opinion, is that we should not have perma bans. Now that doesn't mean that somebody gets to say whatever they want to say. If they say something that is illegal or otherwise, just destructive to the world, then that there should be perhaps a timeout, a temporary suspension, or that particular tweet should be made invisible or have very limited traction. But I think perma bans just fundamentally undermine trust in Twitter as a town square where everyone can voice their opinion. It was I think it was a morally bad decision, to be clear, and foolish in the extreme.
Even after he egged on the crowd who went to the US Capitol, some of them carrying nooses, you still think it was a mistake to remove him?
I think if there are tweets that are wrong, they should, and bad, those should be either deleted or made invisible. And a suspension, a temporary suspension is appropriate, but not a permanent ban.
So if the deal completes, he might potentially come back on, but with the understanding that if he does something similar again, he'll be back in the sin bin.
He has publicly stated that he will not be coming back to Twitter, and that he will only be on Truth Social. And this is the point that I'm trying to make, which is perhaps not getting across, is that banning Trump from Twitter didn't end Trump's voice. It will amplify it among the right. And this is why it is morally wrong and flat out stupid.
Okay. Well, you heard the man, and again, he sort of told you what I said, which is that Trump, at least for the time being, has said he will stay on Truth Social. Now, let me go through a couple of things with you, okay? Donald Trump. You know what's funny to me is that they banned him after, you know, what the host just mentioned, which was the riots. Like, let's say that this logic is okay. Like, okay, what Trump said is evil and he deserves to be banned. Okay. What I find bizarre is that when Donald Trump was on Twitter while president, when he was saying things like, I want to bomb Iran's cultural sites, or I want to bomb this country, which is violence, which is a war crime, a crime of aggression, they didn't ban him. Like, this is confusing to me because you're telling me that somebody who eggs on violence should be banned permanently. And yet when Trump was egging on violence, international violence, using the armed forces of the United States to commit war crimes, you kept him on Twitter? How does that make any sense? I don't understand that. Like, that is infinitely worse than whatever they were mentioning now. It's infinitely worse. It's an international crime. It's a war crime and a crime of aggression. You know, he said on Twitter that he will bomb Iran's cultural sites. That's a war crime. You cannot bomb another country's public infrastructure, civilian infrastructure, cultural sites. This is a war crime. There's no question. It's unequivocal. You cannot dispute this. And they kept him on there. And I'm talking about one incident. There are other incidents where he was threatening to bomb countries. Like, can someone please explain to me how that makes any sense? So even if you accept the liberal, the neoliberal, neo-fascist logic, they don't even apply it consistently. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because they agree with Trump on this violence. They perpetuate it themselves. And that's why you don't see any difference with Western, or I should say US foreign policy, when a Democrat president is elected, or the Democrats control the House and the Senate, or the Republicans are in the White House and the House and the Senate. Do you understand? Because they are in complete unison and agreement on this violence. They both perpetuate the exact same imperialist violence. And so that shows to you that they are not only inconsistent in their logic and their application of who should be banned, but they are complete, absolute hypocrites. And another thing that I should point out is, just by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me show you these Trump tweets because you might not be in the loop. So this is in January of 2021, and yeah, it was 2020. No, January 4th, 2020. And this is what Trump said because he had just assassinated General Soleimani. Okay, which that also is a crime of aggression. So he just murdered General Soleimani, who, if you want a comparison, he's sort of like the defense secretary, the equivalent of the U.S. defense secretary. Although that's really kind of like a crude comparison. I don't think you can compare him to any U.S. official. But this is what he said, right? He said that if Iran responds, okay, to this assassination by Trump, he said that, let this serve as a warning that if Iran strikes any Americans or American assets, we have targeted 52 Iranian sites representing the 52 hostages taken by Iran many years ago, some at a very high level and important to Iran and the Iranian culture. And those targets and Iran itself will be hit very fast and very hard. So just to be clear, it wasn't Iran just randomly threatening the US. No. The United States assassinated General Soleimani, which is an act of war. If Iran had assassinated a U.S. general or defense secretary, there would be a war. This is a fact. So the United States committed an act of war against Iran, and Iran is like, we are going to respond to you if you don't calm the hell down immediately. And then he threatens them again with bombs. So they didn't ban him for this. They kept him. No problem. He was on Twitter for another entire year. Okay, so just to put that into context about how, what hypocrites they are. That violence is okay. That's the beautiful violence. You know, like they were saying on, what's his name? Brian Williams. Oh, the beauty of our weapons or whatever the hell. So that's interesting to me. Now, honestly, I think there's some truth to what Musk is saying in terms of if you ban Trump, you kind of amplify his voice in a way. I don't know. Honestly, this is yes and no, because they didn't just ban him from Twitter. They banned him really everywhere. I don't know. That's debatable at the end of the day. It's random. It's not something you can entirely predict. But the thing is, you saw that what Musk was saying, that was interesting to me, because he said if you say something illegal or something that's destructive to the world, then you will get a timeout or the tweets won't be visible, right? So that's important, because in some countries, I know Americans, they have their own sort of idea of what free speech means. But let me give you an example, because, Germany, I think most people would consider a democratic country, right? But in Germany, you cannot say Nazi things for obvious reasons, because that's where the Holocaust was committed. That's where, the Nazis were in power and started World War II, and 50, 60 million people killed. So that is specifically, explicitly banned. And by the way, the United States and the Allies are in favor of this, because they made sure that the Germans put this in their constitution. So, I guess even under Elon Musk, that would not change on Twitter. You cannot say Nazi stuff on Twitter, because that would be illegal. So I don't know why they're freaking out about this. I think the reason that the Democrats and the neoliberals and so on, they're freaking about Elon Musk buying Twitter is because they don't really censor people for saying illegal things. That's not the issue. They want to censor people who disagree with them, right? So do you see the difference? If you say, for example, the NATO are lying about what's happening in Syria, or Hunter Biden laptop story, whatever you want to pick, they were stopping the New York Post from using its Twitter account. They didn't do anything illegal, but they said something uncomfortable that the establishment doesn't like. So do you see? Now, that was obviously a temporary suspension, but it is a form of censorship. And so the logic here still applies, because the idea is that Democrats, neoliberals, the elites in Washington, and I want to be very clear, I don't think this is just a Democrat thing. If Republicans were in power, they'd do the same crap. And the proof in that is because you have all the new conservatives from Bush's Republican Party that are now Democrats. So it means nothing. But my point is that the elites, the establishment in Washington, D.C., they want the power to censor people on legacy media. That's if you even come on, if you're lucky enough to get on. And then, of course, on social media, which is an extension of the U.S. Big tech industry and military-industrial complex. And the thing is, when you have someone like Musk, who's not even really going to do it, it's just the idea of it is, it's shocking to them. It's unheard of, right? And then they come up with all these things, Russian propaganda, Donald Trump, all these like fear-mongering tactics to just shut people up that they don't like. So that's really what it's about. It's not about people actually threatening violence. Like this violence, they love it. They love this, the Democrats. They love this, the Republicans. They're the same. There is no difference whatsoever. And that's why Donald Trump was never impeached for bombing Syria or bombing Iran, or I should say Iran's general in Iraq. So that's like 2 violations of sovereignty. Of course, they're fine with that. They're the same. So you've seen my take on all these things, and I don't like to call it a take. I'm informing you about this. So this is what CNN had to say.
This all happened in the wake of January 6th, when political leaders talked about throwing Trump out of office and security officials worried about further violence in Washington or elsewhere. Twitter decided to ban Trump permanently because of the risk he would continue to incite violence. Musk on stage today saying that was a morally bad decision and, quote, foolish in the extreme. So Musk indicating that he will reverse that permanent ban if he is able to take over Twitter, as he's trying to do. Now, he said perhaps a timeout would be appropriate if someone was being destructive on the platform, or, quote, a temporary suspension, or to make a certain tweet invisible, he said. But, quote, I think a permanent ban just fundamentally undermines trust. So notable from Musk that he would let Trump back on. Right now, he is expected to take over Twitter. However, some stockholders aren't so convinced he's going to go through with it. There's still a little bit of skepticism, and he acknowledged that on stage today. But if he takes over Twitter, Trump will be back. And then the question becomes, will Trump benefit from being able to tweet again, or will it actually hurt him? And I don't think any of us have any idea.
Well, Well, I mean, he's certainly benefited in the past. I feel like Elon Musk just knows that he himself can escape to space, and the rest of us Earthlings will have to deal with this. That's my take on it. Brian Stelter, thank you.
I think that's a sharp take. I think it is, Allison. It's a sharp one. All right.
It's a hot one. I know that.
Yeah. All right. Listen, we're just.
God, this is so childish. What garbage, really. Just complete garbage. God, they're really something. Anyway, I saw, speaking of Elon Musk, maybe I'll do this in a separate video, but speaking of Elon Musk, I saw that he also has sent Starlink. Starlink is basically his way of providing satellite internet in remote locations when there's no infrastructure, right? So you basically unpack it, you hook it up, and you can have internet with a little dish. And he sent those units to Ukraine, right? And you even had people that are fighting in Ukraine filming themselves and saying, thank you, Elon Musk, for the Starlink and so on. And the amount that they sent, I think, was about 1,500 they sent for free. And I think the U.S. Department of Defense requisitioned 3,000 more, something like that. So it's between 4,000 to 5,000 of those units. Now, obviously, they're not javelins, but you need them to operate in the field in today's day and age. It's important to have that. And the point that I'm trying to get at here is that, you know, if Elon Musk was really a so-called threat to the establishment, he wouldn't be where he is. This guy gets paid by the Pentagon at the end of the day. You know, he has contracts with NASA. He has contracts with the Pentagon. This guy gets government cheese. You know what I'm saying? Like, billionaire aside, we all know how billionaires make their money, right? They don't really make it. So, because there's this whole myth that, oh, they work very hard. They're more hardworking than you and me and the people in their factories and all of this stuff. That's not true. That's a myth. They exploit a lot of legal loopholes. They steal the money. Wage theft is a thing. Government cheese is a thing. Government handouts are a thing. All of these things add up, of course, and we should not ignore that. My point is, though, with Musk, specifically him, his kind of business, his line of business, yes, he makes cars. That's great. They're electric cars. He also had endeavors like PayPal. Okay, wonderful. But things like SpaceX, this cooperating with the Pentagon. So you cannot just turn a blind eye and act like, oh no, he's totally against the establishment. What the fuck are you talking about? He literally works with the U.S. Armed Forces. How is that anti-establishment? He is working with them. I don't understand how people think that he is some kind of threat to... It's ridiculous. It's absurd. This is a joke. But some people want to believe in this myth and glorify billionaires and so on. Again, I'm not saying he's this or that, and I don't know this guy. I don't know him. But you cannot look at what his business dealings are, what his business is, where he gets the money from, and just kind of, you know, completely remove the link between the U.S. establishment and so on, because it's not just some petty contracts. These are very, very serious things. It's like Amazon doing cloud services for the U.S. intelligence agencies, right? This is also a very important link. And the U.S. government would not deal with you, literally deal with you, business dealings, if you were a threat to them. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't make any sense. So if he was really some sort of, you know, danger, he wouldn't be where he is. That's just a fact of life, man. None of these billionaires would be.